Welcome to another episode of the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. And today with me, my guest is Gabriel Gaarden with another segment of Making Sense with Gabriel. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hi, Gabriel. How are you?
Doing well. How about you, Nancy?
I am doing great, especially because we're doing another segment of Making Sense with Gabriel. Yeah, raise the roof. Here's a question that one of our viewers sent in. What about omega-3 fatty acids? Can you tell us about those?
Sure thing. You know, it's interesting you asked that question because I was just listening to one of my favorite podcasts over the weekend. It's called Plant Proof. So I recommend that to anybody out there who wants to learn more about nutrition in general. Certainly evidence-based nutrition that comes straight from, the best and the peer-reviewed literature. And the peer-reviewed literature is really going to be our best source of nutrition information. But of course, learning how to interpret that and understand it is a big thing. And so that's why I really recommend resources like a good dietitian like myself, who, is able to, who regularly reads the peer-reviewed information, as well as resources like nutritionfacts.org, because there, Dr. Michael Greger, MD, is a wonderful resource. He reads hundreds or thousands, many different medical journals, thousands of articles every year. And he, synthesizes them down into these great bite-sized videos and articles so that it makes the information much more accessible to the average layperson. Wonderful resource. And then Plant Proof is a wonderful podcast that you can listen to when you're out driving in the car, walking your dogs, going for a run or a hike. And again, wonderful evidence-based nutrition information. So I highly recommend it. And the host just had on a couple named Dean and Aisha Sherzai. They are medical doctors and researchers, and they're neurologists. So they specialize in brain health. And of course, omega-3s are important when we're speaking about both our cardiovascular as well as the health of our brain. So they were just on the podcast speaking specifically about omega-3s. So I got some really wonderful up-to-date information about a new study that they're just publishing about omega-3 supplementation. And so, yes, omega-3s are very important. What they found as a result of a certain type of analysis that they did, which is called a meta-analysis. Now, meta-analysis uses a number of criteria where they actually look at all the available studies on a given subject, and then they'll use inclusion and exclusion criteria to eliminate studies that they think don't really have to do with the particular focal point that they're looking for with their meta-analysis. So they throw out a bunch of studies that really don't fit. And then they end up including in the meta-analysis somewhere between like 50 and 80 studies. And so that's what they did. And what they found is that, yes, omega-3s are very important, but they couldn't determine whether or not supplementation was, yes, probably a very good thing for both the elderly and both the very young people, like little children. But there wasn't enough evidence studying adults specifically, people in like more the late teens to all the way through middle age to adulthood. Wasn't enough information to determine whether or not it should be a firm recommendation that young adults specifically should supplement with omega-3s. Now, I personally, because I think it's a good insurance policy, so to speak, supplement with an algae based, so that's vegan, right? It's not coming from fish. We hear a lot about fish eating with omega-3s because, yes, fish, the fatty fish specifically are rich in omega-3 fatty acids. So we're thinking about things like salmon and tuna and other things like that. But of course the fish get those omega-3s from, these algae and these other plants in the ocean that they consume. And so we don't have to get it through the fish. We can get it straight from the algae. And there's a number of algae-based algae oil, they're called omega-3s. And what they have are these long chain omega-3 fatty acids. One's called EPA and the other one's called DHA. And so we think that EPA has more to do with our cardiovascular health, so the health of our vascular system and our hearts. And then DHA has more to do specifically with the health of our brains. And so if you're taking an algae-based omega-3 supplement that has EPA and DHA in it, again, it's a really good idea to think about with both little kids and elderly to definitely probably be taking one of these supplements. Now, if you're just an adult in between those two age groups, since there's not enough data to demonstrate whether it's an absolute, like it's like a for sure recommendation, you might be able to get enough of those EPA and DHA through eating a precursor to those. Now, the body synthesizes EPA and DHA from a precursor known as ALA, and that's alpha linolenic acid. And that's the type of, it's again, omega-3 precursor. It's not officially an omega-3 like EPA and DHA are, because the body has to convert it into those other substances. But ALA comes from a lot of those healthy sources of omega-3 fats that we hear about, like walnuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, dark leafy greens. You even get some in berries, right? And so we can eat a number of these whole plant foods, specifically those fat-rich plant foods like hemp seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, and walnuts, I think are going to be the richest sources of alpha linolenic acid, ALA, that then gets converted by our body with a number of enzymes to EPA and then DHA as well. But there's an important point to make there, and that's that we know that there's another essential fatty acid, right? Essential fatty acids are fats that we have to consume through our diet because our body cannot manufacture them. So there's other fats that our body can just use other substances, and it can basically, like building blocks, like Legos, it can put together these fats that our bodies need to do different functions, you know? But essential fatty acids have to be consumed in our diet, right? Or through a supplement, but they have to be consumed. And so omega-3s and then omega-6s are both different forms of essential fatty acids. The problem with our modern standard American diet is we have a very high ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. And so we're getting a lot of omega-6 in our diet, but we're getting very little omega-3. And that's a problem. Because if you looked back historically when humans, didn't have access to all of the fast food and the processed foods and the junk foods that we eat today, the ratio between those two, omega-6 and omega-3, would have been much more similar, right? We would have been getting maybe a little bit more omega-6 than omega-3, but it would have been more like 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 ratio, or maybe like a 3-to-1 at most. But many people now are getting 10-to-1, 12-to-1, maybe even more than 12-to-1, omega-6 to omega-3. And that's a big problem because those enzymes that convert ALA into the EPA and the DHA that we need for our cardiovascular and our brain health, we need those things. They're very important for those, different parts of our bodies. Excuse me. That's the same enzymes that convert ALA to EPA and DHA are also converting omega-6 to other things that we need in our body, And so if we're eating a lot of omega-6, that's going to interfere with that whole process. And so we want to make sure, again, to eat less of those junky foods, less of the added oils and all the processed foods, more whole plant foods. And then I think it's wise, if people can afford it, to think about taking a supplement, an algae oil-based supplement would be a good idea that has that EPA and that DHA in it. And again, not enough data to prove that young adults absolutely need it. But if you're not going to take a supplement, I highly, highly encourage people to concentrate on eating dark leafy greens, ground flax, and ground chia seeds. You have to grind those seeds in order to get access to those healthy fats. Otherwise, the seeds just go right through you. Hemp seeds are also great, and then walnuts. And then other nuts and seeds are great as well, but those are going to be your highest sources.
Awesome. I'm so happy because last time we talked, you talked about the importance of these seeds, and I've incorporated more chia seeds, hemp seeds, and flax seeds grounded to my diet because I want to get healthy like that. And another thing, people do talk about getting omegas from the fish, and they forget that the fish nowadays is so polluted with chemicals and drugs and all that you in plastic, that now if you're eating fish, you're ingesting all of that as well. But thank you for another interesting segment. See you again.
Sounds great. Thanks, Nancy. Take care.
Bye. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Remember to check out our blog, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on Facebook. And if you have a pulse, you have a purpose. Live vegan.